Hi, welcome to another video. I'm going to be working on my Mazda MX5 NC Miata, and today I'll be removing the headlights and Detango in them. That's separating the lens from the back of the headlight and repainting the bezels inside. In my case, I'll be painting them in like a black satin. So I'll take you through that, and hopefully this video will be helpful. Thanks for watching. So first of all, I'm going to get my front end of my Mazda up off the ground by putting it on some axle stands, removing the front wheels, and then I will be moving the wheel arch splash guards so that it gives you access to the bolts which are running across here, and also across the front there'll be bolts running across the top, and also underneath there'll be some bolts under there, and also there'll be some bolts running through here on the other side as well. So when you next see me is when I've got it up in the air. Okay, so I've got my car on axle stands. As you can see, my axle stands just fit inside where the bottom wishbone is connected to the front subframe, nice and snug. Okay, so then now it's a case of undoing all these bolts running along the front of the bumper on the underside, and then I'll be removing the wheel shields around the front. Let's do that first. Okay, for these underside crosshead self-tapping bolts, or whatever they are, I'll be using a 8mm socket on a small 1/4 inch ratchet, and there's quite a few of them. And then once you've undone those, you'll find some of these fasteners which you just give a 1/4 turn, and then you just prise them out to help you release these lower front splash guards. Okay, let's do that as well. Okay, so when you come to these wheel shield fasteners, you just get a very small flathead screwdriver, and you put it in the centre and give it a little turn, and it should just fall out in the middle, and then just grab the whole fastener and remove it from the hole. It can be as simple as that, but sometimes they're a bit more stubborn. Just a little, like this one here, it's just turning entirely round, so you've got to hold the outside of that fastener before the inside will turn, and then do that to all the ones you find holding these plastic wheel shields on. Okay. So now working inside the front wheel arch, you've got all the same fasteners running inside the wheel arch. You've got those two there, you've got 1, 2 there because they still attach to the bumper, And then to release this lower wheel arch liner, you've got to go across the middle and release that one, and that one on both sides, and that will get you access to the bolts holding the upper edge of the bumper to the front wing or fender. Okay. Okay, as you can see, the lower arch liner is now removed. You can got access to your fog light wiring harness there, and I've come to the conclusion that you will need to remove the top half of the arch liner to gain access more for the bolts which are running up that joint between the bumper and the front edge of the wing. So I'm going to do all those. So you've got one in there, one up in there, another there, two there, and then that one there, those two there, one at the top edge, and then you maybe find here's another one around there. Okay, let's get those out and I'll show you what's behind it. Okay, so now you can see that the top part of the wheel shield is now removed, but I found that the bottom half at the rear wheel shield was stapled to the top half of the wheel shield, so that's come out too. So now you can see inside the bottom of the wing, you can see the brake servo or booster, and through to the engine compartment underneath the washer bottle. So now you can see the back of the headlight for the first time, and the actual bolts that you'd be undoing under here is this one here, that one there, and then this one here. Those three. That's all you need to do underneath. And these big plastic spikes are guides for the bumper to locate up to the front wing or front edge of the wing, so that you can pretty much align it up 2 inches away from its final resting position, and then you can put your bolts in. So you've got to do those, undo those three as well. But I'm going to go around to the other side and get the wheel shield off the other side, and then we can look at undoing those bolts there. Back in a minute. Okay, so now we've got the passenger side one off, or the left hand side in my case. Same as the other side. The whole wheel liner is out, and there's the 3 bolts that you need to remove for the front edge of the wing to the bumper, same as the other side. So now I'm going to undo the fog light harnesses. So you just press the centre of that brown connector in, and then at the same time pull the plug off, and that should release the wiring harness from the fog lights. Do that on both sides. Catch you in a minute. Okay, now onto these 3 bolts underneath the front edge of the wing or fender and the back edge of the bumper. You've got these 3 bolts and they are 10mm. So undo those 3 here and on the other side, and all we have left is the 10mm bolts that run across the top edge of the bumper underneath the front edge of the bonnet or hood. See you in a minute. So I've undone those 3 bolts or nuts which hold the front edge of the bumper to the fender or wing, as you can see, and then all that's left now is these 10mm bolts running along the front edge of the bumper onto the front panel which lies underneath the bonnet or hood. So let's get those out, and then it should be just a case of pulling the bumper straight off, which is, I would recommend, a 2-man job, so you've got 1 person at each end. Catch you in a minute. Additional to all those bolts running across the top of the bumper underneath the bonnet or hood is these 2 sitting inside the grille. So you just pop the covers off. So there's 1 there and 1 there. They're 10mm as well, so pop those out, and that should be all the fasteners removed for this bumper. Catch you in a minute. So there's those bolts out of both sides of the grille. One thing I will mention about those bolts is they are different to the rest. These are the bolts which come out and they've got like a tapered shoulder, which is probably for guidance purposes, whereas the ones across the top of the bumper are just got plain shoulders. So be careful that you don't get those 2 mixed up. So now that should be all the fasteners removed. So next time you see us is when the bumper's off. Catch you in a minute. And there you are. The bumper cover is just sitting over on my front garden, and this is what it looks like once it's removed. So now it's a case of removing the headlights, which is in these. You've got a bolt there, you've got a little fastener there, and then a bolt next to it. Then you've got a bolt here just inside the front edge, and then there's one tucked underneath there. Undo all those, they're 10mm on both sides, and then you've got some multi-plugs to remove, which are that one there, this one here, that's for your indicator, that one there for your high beam, or your dipped beam should I say, and that should be all what's involved. I don't think there's one over there, no. Okay, so do your bolts first and come back round to the back and undo all your harness plugs, and then they'll be free to be removed too. See you in a minute. Okay, something I've learned is on this plug, which goes to your dipped beam bulb, you need to press that tiny little button there. You need to press that before it will pull off, because it actually locates on that tiny hole on the terminal on the back of the bulb. So don't just try and pull it off. You need to actually press that center button. Just give it a press as you pull it and it should release. Otherwise it'll be something that you might break. Okay? See you in a minute. There you go. That's what your Mazda MX5 Miata should look like once your headlights have been removed. And that's what they look like removed from the car. So now we just got to get to them indoors and start dismantling them. Catch you in a minute. So now, working on the headlights themselves, you've got 4, maybe 5 little screws to remove, which are that one there, that one there, that one in there, and that one there. I think that's all there is. So you need to remove those before you pop your headlights in the oven. I'm going to remove the bulbs as well, just to ensure that they don't get damaged whilst they're being handled. Do that to the other one as well, and I'll see you in a minute. Okay, you've taken out those 4 little screws out of the back of the headlight. What you need to do now is remove all your bulbs, which is your indicator. No, it's not. That's your side lights. That's your high beam, and that's your dipped beam, and that's your indicator. Remove all your bulbs and the little wiring harness that ran round the bottom of your headlight. Remove that as well. And also you've got a little plastic cap that sits here, as you can see there. That's in place, but I've removed this one. So you want to remove this little black plastic cap. You just prise it out with a screwdriver or something, and that is pretty much all you need to do to get these ready to be baked in the oven. I'm going to bake mine at 100 degrees Celsius or 210 roughly Fahrenheit, and leave them in the oven for about 15 minutes and bring them out and see how soft they are, and try and separate the lens from the back of the headlight. As well as that, I'm going to get my heat gun out, so whilst they are out of the oven I can add some heat as I go along and prise the front of the headlight off, which is along this gap here. You need to get screwdrivers in there just to prise the actual lens away from the back of the headlight, and that's where the glue lives, inside there. So I'm going to pop this one in the oven, and I should see you in a quarter of an hour or so. There you go, one headlight in the oven. It's been about 14 minutes, so about another minute at 100 degrees, and I'll pull it out and see if I can tease the lens off. Catch you in a minute. Okay, now I've got the lens off the headlight, as you can see. The actual temperature was perfect, 100 degrees for 15 minutes. And all I did was got the screwdriver just behind one of these little locating lugs and just teased it over, and then just worked my way all the way around the headlight, just prising it out gently with the small blade screwdriver, and it just came apart. The glue was very stringy, so I just got the screwdriver and broke all the glue strings that were coming away with the lens, and just pushed it all back into the groove where the glue lives, so that it's ready to go back in. So now the next job is to remove this reflector with these little screws, and very carefully remove this orange lens. I think it's glued on, so you just need to be very gentle and prise it off, and that should be all that's needed to be done there. And then that's part of the job you detangoing, which is removing this orange part. And then after that, I'm going to remove this headlight bezel, that grey one there, and give it a bit of a scuff up with some Scotch Brite, and give it a few coats of satin black. Catch you in a minute. Okay, as you can see, I've removed the reflector from the headlight, which was held by 3 little screws, which were that top one there, one on the side there, and one on the bottom there, which are those 3 points there. That one there, that one tucked under there, and that one there. So undo those 3 screws and you have this reflector. Now the only uncertainty is removing this orange lens, because it is bonded on. So I'll have to see what I can do to remove it. Catch you in a minute. And there you go, one amber lens that's been removed from the reflector. All I did was I just gently wiggled it side to side very slowly, and you can just hear the glue just cracking and letting go. So just worked it off, and all you should have left behind is just a little witness mark where the glue was. As you can see, there's a tiny little bit of the lens left behind, which I should be able to just remove with a little scalpel, or if you're lucky enough, you might not have any left behind, and you'll just have that little line, which is more than acceptable for when it goes back in. So the next stage is the big silver bezel inside the headlight lens, which is held in by a few more little silver screws, one there and one there by the looks of it. Oh, and there's one in the centre there. No, it's just the 2. Yeah, just the 2. 1, 2. And it's probably located in some little slots at the top. Catch you in a minute. Okay, I've just removed the bezel out of the headlight lens, and this is what you should have: the bezel on its own, and then this little side light or peanut light lens that sat in there, I've just pushed out from the back. You just press in the three little clips. You just push them in slightly, and as you do, just get your thumb and then just push it through, and it should just drop out, so that you can remove that instead of masking it up when you come to painting it. So now all it's left to do is to get some Scotch-Brite scuffing pad, or some wet and dry, about 300 grit, maybe a bit higher, 600 grit, and just scuff up the whole surface of all this, and you'll be ready for paint. Catch you in a minute. Okay, as you can see, I've got these two headlight bezels painted. All I did is that I used some of this red Scotch-Brite scuffing pads that you can get from hardware stores, or a car refinishing place, because I use these for scuffing up the lacquer sometimes, and for painting the surface or re-lacquering. So they're just sitting there drying, so I'm going to leave them to dry for an hour or two, and I'll be ready to pop them back into the headlight housings, and that's probably where I'll catch you in a minute. So it's the next day. I've allowed those headlight bezels to dry thoroughly overnight. I've popped back in the little side light lenses in both of them, and I'm just tidying up the chrome surround, which was the reflector for the indicator. These indicator lenses were just bonded on that little edge there, and you can see where the glue was. There's like a little witness mark, and even remains of the amber lens still stuck. So with a scalpel, look at, around like something like this, I scraped the majority of the amber lens away, and then I'm going to cover that area, this thin strip there, with some thin strips of foil tape, which you can buy again from hardware stores or DIY shops, and it's self-adhesive. So I've just cut a very thin strip, and I'm just going to run it up there just to cover this area, so that it looks a bit more factory or OEM, so it doesn't look like it's been modified, which to the trained eye you know they've been modified, but it just takes your eye off that little line where the glue was. So once I've done that, I can then screw those back into the headlight housings, and then that's all I need to do to the housings. And then I can then screw these bezels back into the inside of the lens using those two screws. That's all that held these light bezels in, and then the top part just went into those two little slots at the top there. So put the bezel in those slots first, and then replace these screws, and then that'll be done and ready to be heated up in the oven and bonded back together. Catch you in a minute. So just an update, I've put my reflectors back in from my indicators, and as you can see, there's the silver foil that I put on and gave it a little polish, so it just hides that mark where the amber lens used to be. and I took the opportunity to put my LED indicators and switch back DRL lights so that I can get them in nice and straight. And as well as that, I've put the bezel back inside the headlight. I took the opportunity to polish the lens of the headlight inside and out before I put that bezel in, and for that I used some Meguiar's here it is, some Meguiar's Scratch X 2.0 fine scratch and blemish remover. I use that on the outside and then a tiny little bit on the inside, just to give them a bit of a polish up, and removed a tiny little bit of yellow staining that was sitting on top of the headlight on one of them, so that's all gone. So all that's left to do now is take your lens and just offer it up to the headlight and get it on as close as possible, and then pop them in the oven, in my case 100 degrees, for about 15 minutes. Pull them out and just push them really hard together so that the lugs on the lenses snap inside the actual clips on the headlight. And then once you've done that, obviously you need to then put the screws that you removed back in as well, which will help to close the headlight up and bring the two halves nice and tightly together, and help the glue to make contact where it was before they were taken apart. So when you next see me is when they have been pulled out of the oven. I'll catch you in about 20 minutes, half an hour. Okay, there you are. I've managed to get them out of the oven, and it was very straightforward. As soon as they came out of the oven, it was that sticky and wet, all the glue, that it just practically slid in place. And as you can see, the little clips are latched over the lugs on the lens, and that's all that was needed to be done. And then went round the back and put the screws in, which pulled the lens into the housing just for the last millimetre or so, which was all that was needed to close them up properly. I made the mistake of putting my LED switchback bulbs in too early, so I took them out before they went in the oven, so they didn't get any hotter than they need to be. So I didn't put them in the oven with the headlight, so I took them out first. I'm in the process of doing some mods on my wiring harness so that I can power these DRL switchback bulbs, and after that you'll catch up with me when I'm installing these headlights back in. So I'll see you in a bit. For those of you that are interested in these LED DRL switchback lamps, I just got them off eBay. They were about, I don't know, about 15-20 quid. Just a cheap set from probably China or Taiwan or somewhere. So they're amber and white, and all you do is you take this black cable and you put that to ground or earth. This red one goes to your indicator signal wire, which I'm at the process of just splicing into, which I'll show you how I did that. And this white one goes to an ignition live, so that once the car's been switched on, that is the signal wire to turn these lamps to white. And then once you start indicating, obviously this red wire gets power and switches the lamp to amber and continues to flash amber until you cancel your indicators, and then it will just switch back to white from the ignition live that you connect to this white wire. So once I'm splicing into my second indicator, I'll show you how I did it. Catch you in a minute. Okay, now that they've cooled down, I've just thought I'd just show you the wiring harness that you have to replace to connect all the parts of the light ready for installation. There's the LED light, which I've gone through with you, where the wires go. Black one to ground, red one to indicator signal, and the white one is to ignition live. That's your main harness into your headlight. It goes down into this little clip, then into that clip, and then it goes up to your headlight leveling adjustment motor, and then just scoots round to your high beam, and then the last one just goes up to your side lights for the last light in the headlight. So that's now ready to be installed back in the car. I'm going to stick this up somewhere close by once it's installed, so that it's close to the headlight, and the wiring I'm putting into the car's harness will then meet these 2 or 3 wires once it's installed. Do that to both of them, and you'll be ready to install them. Catch you in a minute. Okay, I've discovered which signal wire is for the indicator, and on this case, on this 09 Mazda MX5, it's the green wire going to your indicator with the white trace going through it. So I've just cut it and then stripped back 2 sections. So I'm going to solder this wire onto there, and then obviously then bring this one up and then solder that one back on, so that the signal wire has got continuity again, and then this wire soldered on will be my supply wire to that red wire on my switchback LEDs. I'll come back to you once I've done that. Catch you in a minute. So I've soldered my little jumper cable or jumper lead wire onto my indicator signal wire, and I've soldered it, and I've soldered the end of this one. So I'm just going to solder these 2 together like that, and then cover them with the original plastic sheathing that I removed off the actual car's harness, and then tape up the ends with some insulation tape, and that should make it a bit more weatherproof. I'll show you the one I did earlier. There it is there. There's the plug. There's the joint inside there. Plastic sheathing, and wrap that up with some insulation tape. And there's the signal wire. Little jumper lead ready to connect to that red lead on those LED switch backlights. And once I've finished that, I'll come back to you. See you in a minute. So I've got my two headlights back in, as you can see, and I tapped in to a wire which is on the back of the fuse box on the top there. You've got this plug, and on that plug you've got this black wire with a yellow trace. That is a switched live from the ignition. So I've taken two wires off of that using this Scotch lock, and I've run it through the bottom of the box and just popped them through a little hole in the bottom. And that one will supply the white wire on my DRL switchback lights, and then on the red wire, you saw me do it earlier, I've taped or soldered it to a green wire on the original harness, and then the black wire to these lights I've made a little lead that comes from an original earth connection on the chassis of the car. I've done that on both sides, so they all should work. Well, in fact I know they work because I've already tested them. So I'll jump in the car and switch it on and show you. Here's one. There's the other. And if I put my hazards on, you should see them switching back. One indicator and two indicators. That's the daylight running lights. I put the hazards on. And there you got LED indicators as well. How about that? Not bad for a day's work. Hello. So the car's all back together now. The bumper's back on. It's the reverse of how you took it off, so I shouldn't need to show you how to put a bumper back on if you're confident to do the job. It's quite straightforward. So if you enjoyed this video, please like it, share it if you must, and subscribe. I appreciate you watching it, and catch you again soon.